And welcome everybody to what is the second race of the 2020 F1 year, a great race at Styria. Never heard of it before myself, but it sounds like a nice place to be, I guess. It isn't everywhere in Austria, though. I mean, depending on your nationality. But anyway, I won't go there. Welcome everybody. This is the race review from myself, Simos, Fabio.
Hi.
The Hello. Yep, absolutely excellent. I'm surprised you didn't crash into yourself there, Fabio, when you said that. But we'll get to that later as well. Okay, so yeah, it was a fantastic race. Really, I'm saying that, of course, because I'm completely biased towards Lewis Hamilton, who not only started on pole but also finished on pole, and it wasn't overtaken even once during the race. So yes, it was a lights out to flag dropping finish for Lewis, the potentially 7 times world champion this year, Lewis Hamilton the Great. And I say that advisedly. So anyway, there we go. Mercedes had an
As
awesome car this weekend. They'd sorted out the problems from last weekend. There were no keep off the curbs. There were no keep off other people's cars. There was none of that going on in the Mercedes team, unlike some other teams we could mention. And Bottas drove to second place from third place. It was a good start. Lewis got off the line well. He raced well. Verstappen was in second place from what was a very, very good qualifying for Verstappen, but we'll get to that. Um, Sainz did very well off the line as well, fourth, and challenged Verstappen on the first lap. But of course, Verstappen kept the inside line, kept a hard racing line, and managed to get to second place. That dropped Valtteri to fourth place, and then basically that was how the race then progressed. It was Valtteri trying to overtake the other two in what was a superior Mercedes, it seemed. There were some other interesting points during the race, that's for sure. The battle between Verstappen and just about anybody that came near him was interesting. And he first raced Sainz, then he raced Bottas. There were some other bits and pieces. The two Renaults did very well. But of course, on the first lap, the major talking point, I would think, and the thumbnail for today's show, was, of course, the Ferraris having a tete-a-tete, shall we say, into turn three. Unfortunate coming together. One trying to ride the other. I don't know whether Leclerc thought that he was going to get an advantage by jumping on the back of Sebastian Vettel's car because Vettel was a little bit quicker. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? Either way, it put both Ferraris out, which was a tragedy for the race. Otherwise, we would have seen a great charge from the back from the two of them, I feel. That was not to be. We were deprived of that, and so it was basically teammate on teammate action for most of the race until we got close to the end. As we got to the end of the race, everything started to unfold. Which was a Sainz and or Bottas and Verstappen. I think that was probably the best kind of duel of the race. Bottas tried to keep going around the outside of Verstappen, but to no avail. Verstappen kept his line perfectly, and in the end, the only thing that allowed Bottas to get past, of course, was indeed the DRS. I noticed also that the two more, shall we say, experienced drivers managed to go side by side through. I think it's turn 4, is it? That dodgy right-hander, dodgy long right-hander, where everybody's been crashing. And in fact, later on in a couple of laps later, I think it was Albon crashed there as well. He tried to go around the outside there of Lewis in the first race, and paid the penalty. And again, he tried to go around the outside of I think it was Perez, and Perez paid the penalty. But again, a very reckless move by Albon. He hasn't got into the year just yet, I don't think, and he certainly needs to get a little more racecraft, it seemed to me. because again there was touching front wheel to rear wheel, and again Perez paid the price this time, but that could so easily have been a puncture for Albon. So I think he was lucky. Norris had a beautiful little comeback on the last couple of laps, as he absolutely sized through the other drivers who were fighting, namely again Stroll and Ricciardo probably.
Yes.
Ricciardo just didn't have the car under him. You could tell his tyres were gone, so that was a bit unfortunate. Stroll, in what was a good looking racing point, seemed to be handling well, seemed to be running well. In fact, they actually did very well to get 6th and 7th place in the race, just in front of Ricciardo, funnily enough, which we will talk about in a little while, I hope. But nonetheless, Norris did really well. He was very aggressive on the last couple of laps, as you can usually expect from Norris these days. He seems to have matured into a very good race driver almost straight away, and somewhat unexpected, but considering how he is off track when you see him in some of those VR races and stuff, he almost seems to be 5 years younger than his actual age. But actually, when you get him in an F1 car, boy, is he a hell of a racer. He makes good decisions. So that's fantastic to see, of course, because I'm a huge fan of Norris. Anyway, that was basically it. The finishing order was Lewis, Bottas, Maxident Verstappen in 3rd place, who didn't have any problems. He drove like an absolute star, outperformed his car, which was good to see. His teammate Alex Albon, who basically used his car to get where he did. Lando Norris, again outperforming his car, I feel. And then Perez and Stroll, a lucky finish for Perez. Stroll, who drove well again, nothing outstanding, but certainly drove well. And sorry about the noise there, people. That's just my Italian friend getting drunk because of the result Ferrari had. And Daniel Ricciardo 8th, Carlos Sainz 9th, and Kvyat, who turned out to be the alpha driver this week, in 10th place. So thanks very much for that. That was the race review. A couple of outstanding things that we'll talk about, but I want to pass it over to Fabio for now to say what was your highlight of the weekend, and how far do we think we're getting in the championship?
I think that what I was most surprised of is a driver which I usually don't care too much. I don't like it too much, but I got to give it to Perez. He made a fantastic race. He started 14th and he was basically 5th up until he broke the wing. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, that was a pretty interesting race in the midfield. They had very good duels, as you said. But the thing which really surprised me, I think it was better in the race, was the qualifying. First of all, because of the fact that I think it was the race director, or I also remember the name. I can't recall it right now. He decided to postpone the qualifying instead of trying to do that on Sunday, and they did that on the wet. And I mean, Lewis was fucking amazing. I mean, he gave 1 second to everybody else, and he reminded me of drivers which I think they're better than him. That's what I mean. In the specifics, he reminded me of Senna and Schumacher. So kudos to the guy. He made a fantastic race, and it was also interesting because you could see what are the really the real strong points of this year Mercedes. They have the drive that they have outside the corner is fucking impressive. It's amazing. So the car is fantastic. Of course, it's the evolution of the car, which is now formerly called the Tracing Point. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, even that car, it was great. But you're right. Lewis was 1.2 seconds ahead of his closest rival, and yes, some of that could be put down to track evolution, I'm sure. But nonetheless, in order. Ciao, Bella. Also, Grazie ragazzi, mozzarella, Magello. Okay, but sorry. I just made myself laugh too much there. But
Hey, listen, I have a life, right? So yeah.
yeah, I know you don't give a fuck. It's like, yeah, fucking English. Anyway, I won't go there. But anyway, where was I? Yes, yeah, a fantastic qualifying, as you say. They decided to hold it, even though conditions were probably a little too wet for some of the cars. But nonetheless, it was a good throwback to the old days when they used to race in where they get the kitchen sink out and race that if they had to, and right. they often did. And so yeah, I was fantastic. I was pleased to they'd let that happen. But nonetheless, really good. Verstappen again was fantastic. I mean, the cream came to the top, didn't it? Really, so. It was nice. Sainz obviously doing a good job as well.
I think that Verstappen and Red Bull in general were really pissed about those two races back to back because they said they were going to to split the atom and fuck everybody else. So we got to get advantage. I mean that didn't really happen. So
yeah,
I'm not sure they're really happy. I mean they should be happy with the results. But the fact that that Verstappen, so first of all, I mean Verstappen was never a serious contender to Lewis. Actually, he had to be really careful not to have to Bottas, So and Albon, I mean Albon was non-existent. I think that it should be. I mean, how drivers in Red Bull, they're not really. Renting a place for longer than months,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah.
And he has underperformed in the last or since the beginning of this year. And that it doesn't bode well for him. I do worry because I do rate him as a driver. He's extremely fast and competent in a car, but he seems to be taking these. He's made the same mistake 2 races running. I mean, and he said he was going to do it. That's what amazes me. He said, I would do the same thing again. Yeah, but you were wrong the first time. If you notice in that race, Norris was put in the same position where he was clearly ahead going through that corner, and he said afterwards, "Well, I backed out."
Yeah.
Right. So we didn't crash, and of course he was then able to take the place and get it later on in the lap.
Right.
And Albon didn't. Albon didn't.
Yeah. Oh, you gotta give me a second here. It's a very important phone call. Problem. Please go ahead.
Yeah. And Albon didn't. Albon didn't back out, and yes, he got away with it, and Perez just broke his wing on Albon's rear wheel. But of course, in past days, that would have almost certainly meant a puncture. And what are you supposed to do with that? You can't keep going. Well, it's not a mistake. Yeah, just because you got away with it, right? Because there'll be enough times when you don't get away with it. So I'm a little bit disappointed with Albon. I think he's trying too hard, and that tends to be the situation with the second Red Bull driver. Of course, he's going to try too hard because he's got Verstappen in as the lead driver, who just always tries too hard but doesn't make the mistakes anymore because he spent a couple of years making the mistakes. That's why we call him Maxident Crashstappen. Of course, because he did make all those mistakes, but he stopped making them last year, and he hasn't made them this year. So fantastic to him. Trying to keep up with that guy, well, that's just a nightmare. And although Albon realizes that and doesn't put so much pressure on himself, he's still making the mistakes, and that can't be done. So I'm a little disappointed with Albon in that sense because, as I say,
what? You're still there?
I want to see him, which he can succeed with, but he's not. I'm still here. Are you still there?
Okay, yeah. No, you muted for a second. Sorry, my bad. No, but you're right. Problem. I mean, I agree with you. The problem thing with Albon right now is that, so yes, he made the same mistake, which is a problem. The thing is that I don't think he's got the pace.
No problem.
Red Bull needs a driver which has a at worst like 0.4 seconds from Verstappen, because he needs to help the guy, and right now he can't. So that I think is a big problem, and they're only lucky. I mean, they're only lucky that in Red Bull, I don't think they'll get Vettel back, because I mean. And I can't hear you right now. I think you're breaking up, Simon.
There we go. Hopefully, I'm back now.
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, it's my internet. Of course, I'm in Brittyland. Brittyland, and the internet in Brittyland is notoriously shitty land.
It's the Brexit. Yeah, we all know that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Brexit. Yeah, they keep cutting the internet off to the country, restricted bandwidth and all that.
You know what you should do? You should do like...
I know what I should do. I should move. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you should do what Racing Point did. You might want to copy, I don't know, the French internet or the German internet.
The German internet, but not the French. But yeah. Well, obviously, who's going to copy the French internet?
Oh, no, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we could be that racist in this country. Anyway, moving on. Moving on. So, I mean, Albon, he's again, I really want to see him succeed, but I worry for him if he doesn't start getting a bit closer to Verstappen.
Yeah.
Although, I felt Verstappen used his tyres up to the point where they were no good at the end, and he was never going to be able to challenge Bottas. And if he'd just concentrated on beating Bottas from the beginning, maybe, just maybe, he could have done it. But again, I still doubt it. The Mercedes seems so good at the moment. It really does seem the class of the field plus. And the other thing you said about them splitting, they were going we're going to split the atom or whatever. Well, they're splitting Ferrari and Mercedes, which is basically what they claimed they were going to do. But we didn't realize at the time, of course, that Ferrari were going to be so far behind. Go ahead. No, I was going to ask you about updates.
Don't let me start on that. So I would just tell you this. I'm not sure we've seen the worst of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The whole situation, I think, is it's a fucking mess. So if you remember last week, I said that was pretty disappointing. That it seemed to be that they were the only team that didn't make any progress from the Barcelona test. To the. I am starting to rethinking that. I think that they did something, but still doesn't work. That's my problem. And Hungary next race. I mean, last year they took 1 minute. So I'm not seeing a good thing going on from Ferrari. And as I said, I think that there are some reasons, and it's a set of reasons. I don't think there is only one reason. There was a very good point made that they probably, because of you designed the car like in June, July of the previous year, they probably designed the car around the engine, which they got protested and all that kind of shit. So that might be an issue, but I don't think that's the only issue, because they said at the beginning they were going to make a car with more downforce. Now, honestly, I haven't seen that much downforce. I've seen drag. That's what I saw, and drag is problematic because drag is good for nothing. Even looking at the qualifying under the rain, to say that under the rain, the performances they don't matter too much. I mean, fuck me if they matter. I mean, if you watch the camera car from Charles and Sebastian, they had no drive. I mean, the car was all over the place.
Yeah, spinning the wheels, especially in qualifying, right? Brundle was saying, halfway down the straight, they're changing gears and the wheels are spinning.
Right. So
what? That's unheard of. Yeah.
So I think it's a set of problems. I think that it's the engine is part of the problem. The aero is part of the problem. The chassis is part. I mean, it's a fucking mess, and I'm not. really confident in what I heard, after the race by Binotto, when he said that, yeah, we have to figure out what the thing is, if it's an engine problem, if it's an aero problem, if it's a methodological problem, or if it's a concept problem. Now, if that happens, there is really nothing you can save about it. You can put some spit on some parts. You can adjust some stuff. But if the concept is wrong, it's problematic. If the methodology is wrong, which I think is part of the problem, because they talk about the wrong feedback from the wind tunnel and the tests, and the simulations and the results on track. This is something which has always happened. It happens everywhere, right?
Sure.
The thing is that in previous years, I'm talking about 2004, 5, before the test ban, you had the test, so you can realize what was going on very earlier. Now it's if those two the data sets do not match, it's a problem. So I'm not really sure. Again, I'm not really sure we've seen the worst of it. And I'm sorry for Sebastian right now, because Sebastian is the one he has to find a new seat. And yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things in there. I think you're right. Ferrari did, they overhauled as much as they could between Barcelona, but genuinely, I feel that the only thing they really upgraded correctly was the menu. When I say menu, of course, I mean the menu in the dining cart. But apart from that, everything else looked the same on the Ferrari, and I think they were kind of hoping that maybe they had the engine wasn't going to be as bad as it turns out to be, and that was where they were going to spend their downforce. They were going to have a more powerful engine in, and therefore the drag wouldn't matter so much. And I think that would have really aided Sebastian more than it aided Leclerc. I still feel that with the Ferrari. I still feel that.
Keep in mind that so if you have downforce, you have drag, but you can have drag without downforce, which I think is what Ferrari is facing right now, because they do not have downforce. We're seeing the rain. They don't, but they still have drag. So there is something seriously wrong with that car right now, and I have no fucking idea what it is.
Yeah. Again, I think if they were expecting a more powerful engine, they may have thought, well, we don't have to be quite so efficient because we can spend some horsepower to get over it, and we can have the extra downforce that way. But of course, since they've now found out that their engine isn't so powerful, they've then tried to modify the downforce to make it more efficient. And of course, that's then lost overall downforce on the car as a whole, because obviously you need the car to work front to back these days, like the tracing point.
Yeah, so the engine has covered some weak points, even last year and the year before. Yeah. That's true, right? But I still think that there is something which has gone really worse in the car right now. And I don't think with the same engine they would have, made the same. They would have had the same, results right now. It's really a problem.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. In that, it's a big problem for Ferrari. It sounds like they've got some wind tunnel problems, and that they're going to need to go back and if I were them, I would switch. I literally would just put last year's bodywork on the new car and just say, okay, hang it. We're gonna bite the lack of downforce, and we're gonna have our car going fast again in a straight line. Whether the engine will allow that, I don't know. But it seems to me that would be more prudent at the moment, rather than trying to carry on with this high downforce, allegedly high downforce concept, which clearly is, if it can't get them more than, where did they qualify? Like right down at the back, right? 10th, 11th.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if they're qualifying 10th, 11th, they're not going to do very well in the race, regardless.
No, you're right.
And so why not? Why not just put a low downforce package on at every circuit? see how fast you can go down the straights. You know,
they might as well take last year's car. You know, at that point.
Well, basically, yeah.
So what?
Without the illegal engine, of course. I mean, sorry, without the legal engine.
So the reason I said that the engine, I think it's the only part which is going wrong, is that I don't think that this engine is worse than Renault engine, right? But still, those cars are ahead. So there is something besides the engine which is wrong.
Yeah, I would agree. They obviously went the wrong way with the downforce. Right, or they tried to go the right way. We all wanted them to have a better downforce package, but as I say, it's a question of efficiency, and there's too much drag on it and not enough efficient downforce. So, clearly that's a problem, and it is hard to develop a car with efficient downforce, no doubt about it. Especially if you've got some, this rake concept. Allegedly, is extremely difficult to get working properly, and the Red Bull spent how many years trying to get it working before they finally managed to get a really good package. And for them, it's not working. I noticed that Mercedes have even gone a little bit that way this year, right? They seem to have more rake than they did last year. And, maybe it's not working for them, and maybe it's just because they got a more powerful engine that they're getting around the problem. So, that Mercedes comparison, it's easy to spot because, of course, talking about teams that are racing with last year's car, you can see with Racing Points. So, it's very easy to compare and to spot. I mean, I'm furious about that shit. I think it's a travesty. Really?
Thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not a problem of having someone copying the other car, right? Because we know that in previous years we've seen cars which resembled other cars, and especially if you have the Mercedes engine, you get the engine and the gearbox. If you get the Ferrari engine, you get the engine and the gearbox. So the rear part of the car is basically force, and and we all know that in order to have a balance, you got to. So I understand why some car look the same, and that's one thing. The thing right now is what can you legally do and what you can't, and that is the big issue, and that is why Renault presented how do you call it, a complaint or at the FIA, and I think there is a reason why they presented this race, not the other one, because they wanted to double check something. I think they I think they. So first of all, I think it's a very smart move they made because they complain about the brake ducts. Now there is a thing about the brake ducts that there are actually a couple of things. The first one is that Racing Point has said, no, we've done a car which is the same because we took pictures. Okay. The thing with braking ducts is that the only thing you can take with pictures is the outside shape, not the inside. The other thing with brake ducts is that I think up until last year, so there is a list of parts that they got to be proprietary to a team.
Yep.
And brake ducts were not on the list last year. And they got on the list only recently at the beginning of the season. So what I think Renault is doing is they try to find something which they might have got them, in the open. And specifically the brake ducts, because, I think what the rationale is okay, they took the other car. They probably changed the parts which are on the, the forbidden list.
Yep.
They didn't thought about the brake ducts because they weren't on that list, but they get them later. So what they're thinking is that they're still racing with Mercedes brake ducts. And I think it's a very smart move, and I think that they took all this time because they wanted to look at it very carefully and probably trying to look as much as they could during the race where the car outside. And I think it's a very smart move. And I think, if that happens, it's going to be a big problem. Also because Mercedes is involved. In the complaint, the stewards, they said that they want to see the parts from Racing Point. They want to see the parts and they also want to see. They asked Mercedes to provide last year's car parts.
Yeah.
And when you open it, I mean, the internals of the brake ducts again is something that you cannot take a picture of.
Yeah.
So this is going to be super interesting.
Well, yeah, strictly speaking, I mean, you obviously you might be lucky to get a picture of it when somebody's taken the brake ducts off the car to check something, and there's a chance, right? But that would be shown in the records, etc., etc. The other thing I heard was that Racing Point hadn't actually designed some of these new parts. That in fact Mercedes had redesigned their own designs. Yeah. And in fact, if that's the case, then they own the proprietary rights.
So the thing
to
about
these parts, and in which case that's illegal, not because they were designed external to Racing Point, but because a competitor on the grid may have designed them. So that's interesting. I just want to say one thing. I mean, it seems a little too much for me because, and I don't think the FIA are going to support this complaint. But it seems a little too much like, well, hang on a minute. The 2 Racing Points finished ahead of Ricciardo in 6th and 7th. So this would, if it went through, if they just got a grid penalty even, then obviously Ricciardo would be raised from 8th to 6th, which is a huge points increase, for Ricciardo from whatever it is, totally 4 points to 8 points. I mean, so it's doubling their pointage. And that's huge.
Yeah, but that's only fair. You know, it works. You know,
of course, it would be fair if they were
right,
found to be guilty.
Wrong. It's it's one of those things that the thing which I like is that I think they found a very smart way to do that thing.
Indeed, I would totally agree. If that's the case with the brakes, that is right. That's a really clever way to do it because it's and not like you could just redesign brakes quickly. Once you found out, it's a real difficult part to redesign because of the influence it has on the aerodynamics.
And specifically the internal part. This is what they're going to this is what they want to be tested, not the external shape. They want to see how the air flows inside the duct itself. It's full of fins and things. They got to they got the blow by inside. Inside
to maximize cooling.
Yeah. So I mean, this is something that you cannot take a picture of. You got to know how it is built inside. Unless a Mercedes last year crashed and you happen to have found one of these. In the field. But I don't think that happened. So I think it's a very interesting thing. The FIA has already accepted the complaint, and from what I understood, now there is they issued those requirements from Racing Point and from Mercedes to provide the parts. So the thing is going on. It's a process which is going on.
Yeah,
and as far as I understand, now the process goes that they've requested the parts, and once the part have arrived, the steward will examine the parts. And I only hope that Racing Point remember to delete the Mercedes star from inside the stamp of the part. They grinded that. I just, yeah. Because maybe I think if they scratch the big paint,
that might give it away. You reckon?
Yeah. So
Although funnily enough, they've redesigned the Racing Point to look very similar to a TriStar kind of Mercedes badge. Funnily enough, that's just coincidental, perhaps.
I think that they were afraid that the paint was showing, So, but I think they got good files and good sandpaper, and they remembered, to grind that.
Undoubtedly, they're on the ball there, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I think it's a little rich in some ways, as I said last time, because it seems to me that the Alfa Romeo and the Haas not so much, but the Alfa Romeo seemed to copy a lot of aero from previous years. But whether that's a direct copy or whether that is redesigned in inverted commas parts, I don't know. But the concept seemed to be they had it on the car even before the Ferrari showed their car. They'd already designed the parts. So, again, this would lead me to the conclusion that there is some collusion there. but I don't know, and I certainly
Listen, the
wouldn't.
thing is that
You know,
the thing is that we all know that happens, right? The thing is that,
Mhm.
as I said, there is a list of parts you can do that, and a list of parts you can't, and you got to
Mhm.
provide proof that you designed those parts. You got to
Yeah.
have the files, the projects, the calculations and all that shit. So that is not difficult to prove. What Reno is saying is not saying that the car is a copy. He's saying, listen, there is a part which
Yeah.
is the same. We got to inquire that. And
Yeah, I get all of that. Yeah.
that is opens a Pandora box, and that doesn't say that other teams have done it. They probably did it, I mean, Toro Rosso and Red Bull, of
Yeah.
course it was, but they did in a way that was legally allowed. And the rules, we could discuss about the rules, but I think that this year, by the way, they started with a very good feat. They issued penalties, to Leclerc, and I can't remember somebody else. I think Norris. I think it was the other one. So even the steward seems to be a really bit more on the point, compared to what I mean.
Oh, yes.
I mean, we see what happened in the first race, and then the second race. There seems to be pretty consistent, even to the point that I would say that probably judging what they did to Leclerc, Norris penalty was a little bit harsh. But again, that was by regulation. So I'm all for consistency, even if it's bad, because if you got consistent, you can. I mean, you can't really complain. I mean, you can say, okay, you're a piece of shit, but you've been a piece of shit to all these guys, so yeah, fuck it,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would tend to agree. I think maybe, again, we'll just have to leave it in their hands and see what they find, etc., etc. I'm not. I actually think it would be a bad thing for Formula One if they do get done. Maybe they should get some penalties if the brakes are found to be that way. If the brakes are on a banned list and they literally have just copied the inside, I would completely agree with your logic, and I think that should be stamped down on. But again, the aero parts, I've got no problem, with copying last year's car. I just think that's a really clever way of saving money, and it seems to me most of the teams do that. So I think they're being penalized for just making the copies so accurate, and maybe that is something. I don't know. I don't know. Again, it seems to me a little bit harsh, but there we are. I think Perez should have been penalized if because for almost ruining Albon's race in that corner the same way Lewis was. That would be one thing of consistency, which I would say, hang on a minute, different cars, and there you go. You're not penalizing Lewis, right? You're penalizing Lewis. Why is that? When Perez was in exactly the same position, hit the same wheel, and didn't get a penalty. You know what I mean?
I was actually thinking they were giving Perez a black flag because the front wing was all over the place. So I thought they were giving the black flag, but they didn't. So yeah, I mean, Perez race was interesting because he made a good race. But yeah, I mean, at the end it was just all over the place. That's why. I mean, I'm not really that impressed with that guy. I've never been impressed with that guy. Even if
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. With you.
Sorry about that. I had another internet tip. So apologies to the people out there. But yes, I think again, I'm disappointed that they didn't penalise or at least give him a penalty in that corner for doing the same thing that Lewis did. Or what can we say? I mean, why was Lewis penalised? I'm just saying, is it because he was driving a black car? I don't know. It's a little bit suspicious.
Yeah, kind of racist, right?
Very, very racist as far as I'm concerned. And of course, Perez, where's he from?
Is he from Mexico?
He's from Mexico, exactly. He's from Mexico. So I don't know. I think that says it all. Although what it's saying, I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, I don't know where you want to go there, but
I don't know either. I thought he was Spanish, and we know what they're like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, England have played them at football too many times.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, there you go. So I just felt that was a little inconsistent of the stewards there, just because Perez had received damage and clearly his race was compromised. But I think he still should have had a penalty, if to be consistent. But anyway, there we go. We're done now. Lewis's points tally these days in terms of championship. Well, Valtteri, of course, is leading the championship on 43 points. Lewis close behind him, 6 points behind him on 37 points. And then a surprising Lando Norris on 26 points. Well done, Lando. Yeah. And then an even more surprising Leclerc in 4th place on 18 points for finishing second last week. Right. And then Perez, on 16 points. So Verstappen on 15 points. So it's pretty close in there between 4th and I would say right down to 8th. So it's looking like a good season for the would-be runners. And it's good to see that Bottas is out front, because at least we know we're going to get some kind of excitement between Valtteri and Hamilton at some point.
Listen, if Bottas wins the World Championship, I will stop watching F1.
Why?
Because, I mean, this guy is not World Championship material.
You're kidding, aren't you? He's pulled up his socks just like Rosberg pulled up his socks.
I know. And I'm lucky I haven't said that about Rosberg, because I would have stopped watching F1, long ago, but I didn't. But Bottas, no, come on, Jesus.
No, I thought Rosberg was always a World Championship material ever since his Williams days. Maybe it's just me and being a Williams supporter. I don't know, but the Williams mechanics used to speak volumes of a young Rosberg.
The fact that you're a Williams supporter is the only reason I'm accepting all the shit that you're throwing at me with the Ferrari stuff like that. And you know that, because the only thing I have to say is to say Williams, right? So talking about Williams, I was disappointed by Russell. I mean, it was no. I'm serious about it. I mean, it was making a good.
Me too.
He made a mistake in when they started with the safety car. He went wide, and I don't know what the fuck he did, and he was really sorry. I mean, he said he apologized to all the people. I don't think he would have been in a better position, to be honest. But Raikkonen made an honest race with the car that they had. Granted, I mean, Giovinazzi let him pass, but I think they were. They might have catch Kvyat. So
maybe
the Alpha thing, you might be right on paper, because Kvyat was in front, but there were. But I'm not really sure about that.
It's pretty close between the Alphas, the Alpha. I mean, who will be the Alpha Beta and who will be the Beta Alpha? We don't know. I get the feeling, though, that Kimi's lost his will to live this year. I really do. He's like, what the fuck is this car? Jesus, it's got a worse engine than last year. But there you go.
To me, Kimi, if he starts the race, he decides to stop on the straight, get out of the car, and take a shit on the straight, it's gonna be the best anyway. So whatever he does, I mean, you can't beat that guy.
Yeah, fair enough. And he's probably done that a few times, because let's face it, it's Italian food.
Maybe. Now your internet is crapping on you again. Let's see if it's coming back. Because the funny thing is that
Formula One and the race in general, we got Hungary.
Yeah. Up. Talk again.
Are we back? No, we're not back. Yes, there we go. Are we back now?
Yes, you're back now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We're back. Welcome everybody to what has been a fantastic race 2 of Styria. Where the fuck Styria is, I fucking don't know. Anyway, no. Just outside, we've got Hungary next week, of course, and that'll be Hungary. Hugely Hungaroring, hugely exciting racetrack. Can't overtake there. So I guess we're looking for Mercedes 1-2 again. and then crashes behind to see who comes second, and third, and fourth, etc. I really hope I really hope Ferrari are going to turn up with some more upgrades, because the amount of money they spent, they should have an upgrade every day at the moment coming through. So yeah, I really want to see Vettel get some decent results in, because he does deserve it. This year's Ferrari, if it's got more downforce, that suits him. And it's just so disappointing that they're not performing. And he does deserve it. He is, after all, a 4 times world champion. Yeah. You don't get to be 4 times world champion just by driving the right car all the time. You've got to have some real skill and talent to go along with that, and he certainly had it in abundance at Red Bull the first time round. He never made mistakes. He was always great on strategy. Let's not forget his fantastic race at Brazil to win one of the championships, where he was spun around in the first corner or second corner and still managed to come through the whole field with a terribly broken car and to finish high enough to win the championship. What a great race that was. It pissed me off no end, of course, because I wanted Hamilton to win. But nonetheless, I got a kudos to Vettel. He managed to take a car by the scruff of the neck and outperform it to a point where it was where it won a championship. So, what a great racer. I really want him to get some decent car this year, so he can at least show how good he was and go out on a high, because he deserves it. The other thing I'd just say is, of course, we've got the always effervescent Alonso coming back into the sport.
Holy
next
shit.
year.
This is gonna be a shit show. Oh, this is gonna be fucking amazing.
Yes, it certainly will. And there's no doubt that he since leaving F1 has shown his great credentials as a fantastic world champion himself, right? Because he's taken a few cars by the scruff of the neck and outperformed them. He almost won Indy 3 years ago.
Yeah,
and that's no mean feat. So I'm hoping he'll do it again. I believe Indy's coming up in the next month or so, and that's going to be really interesting to see, because
it's going to be super interesting. Mostly because of the fact of the how can I say, the amazing working environment that Fernando Alonso can build around him. It's so serene, so peaceful and quiet.
Yeah, indeed. It has been rumored that he might be quite a difficult driver to get along with.
You don't say.
But I don't know. Because, he's generally right. This is one of the things that's confounding about Alonso. When he says, this is the fucking problem, he's usually right about it, especially when it comes to cars or teams, right? He said, leaving Ferrari, he did say, I'm leaving this team because they can only finish second. And that's all they've done since he left, right? So, clearly he had some notion that this was going to continue this way and that there was a serious systemic problem at the company, which wasn't going to be fixed.
Finished first since he left many times, so I don't know.
Well, they won a few races, but he said he would never win a championship while he was at Ferrari because of the problems. So, and he seems to be right. And until they win one, he's going to be right. And so,
right, of course, because this is how it works. No, you're right.
And he's been at the back of the pack since, right? I mean, he's been away from the sport. He's been at the back of the pack, and he's still right. You know what I mean? So that's not good. That's not good. Coming back to such a team like Renault, though, that's a big ask even for Fernando. And I think he's going to be in exactly the same position that he was in at Ferrari, where he's going to be out driving a car which just can't perform to the level. It wears its tires too quick. It doesn't have enough downforce. Any kind of compromise he makes is going to be in a wrong direction for winning races. And he's not going to be able to drag it higher than Ricciardo can, and that will piss him off. So
the thing with Fernando is that, okay, I mean, he's a very good driver. I mean, nobody denies that. I don't think he's a guy which can develop a car. And I think he showed it. Okay, let's forget about Ferrari. even if I still think that was part of the problem. But let's not talk about Ferrari. Let's talk about McLaren, where he went to. I mean, the car never did really improve as long as he was there. So I think because the talent to develop a car and the talent to drive a car fast, they do not necessarily go together. It's a weird combination of factors when you have a driver which can do both. And that's the reason why sometimes test drivers are not they're not as fast as the racing drivers, but they are there's some instances where they're way more useful than the proper drivers, because it's a different skill set, it's a different thing, and I don't think Fernando is good at that. So if he managed if he managed to jump into a Renault, like which is developing, like this year seems to be, because they made a big jump from last year, it's okay. But if they take Fernando because they need that final step, I think that's going to be really problematic.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, certainly we saw that at Mercedes prior to Lewis joining, where they had Rosberg, who I would argue is one of the better test drivers,
right?
That has been in Formula One for a long time. I mean, since Lauda probably. And Schumacher joins, and what happens? He can't drag the car around any quicker than Rosberg could. Why? Because Rosberg really knew the car so well. There was nothing more to gain. He'd got everything out of it. And it was only funds and the new regulations that allowed the Mercedes to become the dominating force that it is. And kudos again to Lewis for seeing that and going, right, I'm going to take a year of pain, but boy, am I going to get the rewards. And he has reaped them, of course, which is why I disagree with you about Rosberg. He improved his driving year on year to first match Lewis and then start beating him. And that's a huge thing to do for a driver at his point in his career, where he got used to driving a car one way, and then he had to learn how to race it as hard as Lewis.
I mean, about Rosberg, don't get me wrong. I was quite happy that he won the world championship,
but only because he beat Lewis.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, the Bottas, I think, is different from Rosberg. I recognize some qualities to Rosberg that I don't see in Bottas at all, but it might just be me.
Yeah, I think Bottas is a racer more than a test driver, but
he's a butler.
Yeah, he can hustle a car. I mean, he can really hustle a car. So there's that. And again, he's stepped up to the plate, right? I mean, when he was at Williams, again, he was outperforming the car and doing really well on it, I thought. They had a decent designer. But
when I need a coffee, I just ring the bell. My butlers, scuffle through the stairs and come. So the butler has got to be fast,
Yeah, and again, I think if they'd really thought that Bottas was like that and wasn't fast, I think they would have replaced him with Russell just to give him experience. Whereas they haven't. They've kept Bottas, meaning that they think he's a safe pair of hands for racing. Not just a fast driver. And he's shown, as far as I'm concerned, last year that he'd improved again last year. He'd beat Lewis in quite a few of the early races. And when it gets onto Lewis's specialty tracks, no, you're not going to beat him. That's how it is. And Austria not being one of Lewis's specialty tracks, of course, if I was in Bottas's shoes now, I'd be going, shit, I should have beat Lewis. I should have beat Lewis twice there. But no, of course, Lewis finds a way to win. Somehow he just goes, right, that's it. I'm going to study the data. I'm going to do the best lap I can. And he pushed through qualifying. Like you said, a fantastic qualifying. He got faster and faster and faster. Even when he had it in the bag, he didn't back off just in case. He was there. And that's how seriously he's taking it. He knows that he should have won the first race, really. And he's obviously motivated him hugely. One thing you don't want to do with Lewis is motivate him. Right? You got no chance of beating him if he's a motivated man. And they've done that to Lewis now. Bottas, by winning the first race, has completely motivated him. And so all I can see now is Lewis for the rest of the year.
I gotta give credit to Lewis. I mean, the motivation part. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, the man apparently managed to make his dog vegan. So yeah, I mean, the dog is not dead yet. So
the dog's not
he's
dead.
really motivated, and he's a great motivator. I mean, he made a tweet. I'm not saying that, so I'm just reminding.
I didn't know about that.
Vegan.
All right. Yeah. Oh, on that note, we're going to finish because that's done me in. I can't talk anymore. Oh, you got me there, Fabio. You got me. Right. Thank you so much to everybody. He made his dog vegan. Thanks to Lewis's dog. We will keep we'll keep an eye on that story.
His name is Roscoe or something like that.
Yeah. Roscoe. Yeah.
Roscoe,
and we will see what happens. We'll keep an eye on the dog. Make sure and see how long see if he can beat Lewis. Maybe he can. Valtteri can't. Yeah. Anyway, you've done it. You've done my voice in now. So thank you so much, Fabio. It's been great to speak to you again. We'll look forward to Hungary. Is that next week? Is it?
I think it is. Yeah, it's next week.
Yeah,
and MotoGP is next week too. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of engines roaring.
Oh, MotoGP next week. Okay, we'll also look forward to that. We might even start a little bit of ending with MotoGP on the session. But thank you so much, and that's great. Thank you for everybody that watches, and we will look forward to seeing you next week. And ciao.
Ciao. And he did it again. He just went out without Jesus Christ. He did it again. Eventually he's gonna come back. It's fucking insane. You did it again. Yes, it's fucking insane.
Okay, well, woof woof. See you later, people. Bye bye.